You're in the shower and you're winning an argument. Not a real one that hasn't happened, with someone who has no idea they're in it. And you're delivering the lines so perfectly that your jaw is actually tight. Or you're lying in bed at 1 in the morning and your brain has decided to show you, in full color, exactly how tomorrow's conversation goes wrong. Or you're on a walk and you're somewhere else entirely. A version of your life where you said the right thing, where you got the apology, where you're someone slightly better than you actually are. And then you blink, and you're just a person standing on a street, a little more tired than you were before. If your mind runs entire scenes that never happened and may never happen, conversations, confrontations, catastrophes, rescues, this is for you. Because that habit isn't randomness, and it isn't a broken brain. It's a specific skill doing a specific job. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly what job it's doing, what it's quietly costing you, and how to get some of that time back. Let's start with the thing almost nobody says out loud, which is that this is not rare. In 2010, Harvard psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert built a phone app that pinged thousands of people at random moments and asked them what they were doing, how they felt, and whether they were thinking about something other than what they were doing. 250,000 data points later, they found that people's minds were somewhere other than the present about 47% of their waking hours. Nearly half your life is spent thinking about what isn't happening. And they wrote a line that should be printed on the inside of everyone's eyelids. The ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost. Read that again. It is an achievement. Almost no other animal can do it. You can run a simulation of a world that does not exist, populate it with people, give them dialogue, and feel real feelings about it. That is extraordinary. It is also, according to their data, one of the better predictors of how unhappy someone is at any given moment. And here's the part that unsettles people. Mind wandering didn't just follow bad moods, it preceded them. The wandering came first, and the unhappiness came after. So already we have a puzzle. If it makes you miserable, why does your brain do it half the time? Why is the most sophisticated thing your mind can do also the thing that makes you feel worst? And the answer is that imagining fake scenarios is not one behavior. It's two completely different behaviors wearing the same coat. And until you can tell them apart, you can't do anything about either. So let's separate them. The first kind is the rehearsal. This is the argument in the shower. The imaginary confrontation with your boss, your father, your ex. The 2 a.m. pre-run of tomorrow's meeting where everything goes wrong. In these scenes, you are not escaping anything, you're preparing. Your brain has identified a threat, and it is doing the most reasonable thing a threat detection system can do. It's running the simulation before the real thing arrives, so you're not caught off guard. And the second kind is the escape, the other life, the version where you're successful or vindicated or loved by someone who doesn't love you. The scene you drift into on the bus, the one with a soundtrack. Here you're not preparing for anything, you're leaving. You found a door out of the present moment, and the world on the other side of it is better than this one. Same activity, opposite functions. One is armor, the other is anesthetic. And most people who do this a lot do both, on rotation, without ever noticing they've switched. The escape side is where the research gets genuinely interesting because it has a name. In 2002, an Israeli psychologist named Eli Summer, working with patients at the University of Haifa, noticed that several of them shared something none of the textbooks described. They spent enormous stretches of their day inside vivid, elaborate, ongoing internal stories, and it was interfering with their actual lives. He called it maladaptive daydreaming and defined it as extensive fantasy activity that replaces human interaction or interferes with functioning. Two things about his findings matter for us. First, the daydreaming was intensely pleasurable, so rewarding that when people were prevented from doing it, They described something that sounded a lot like craving. This is not a bad habit like biting your nails. It's closer to something that soothes. And second, when Summer looked at where it came from, the pattern was consistent. It tends to develop when a high imaginative capacity meets a childhood that was frightening, constraining, or emotionally empty. The fantasy showed up as solace, as agency, as compensation for something missing. And then, over years, it hardened into a reflex. Which brings us to the part that connects both kinds, the rehearsal and the escape, back to a single root. Because they're both solutions to the same childhood problem, which is a lack of control. Picture a kid in a house where the emotional weather is unpredictable, where the mood of an adult could turn without warning, and the cost of being caught off guard was high. That child develops something extraordinary. They learn to read the room 3 moves ahead. They pre-run the scenarios. If I say this, he does that. If she comes home like that, the evening goes this way. This is not anxiety, this is engineering. It is a survival system built by a young person who could not control what happened to them, so they became exceptionally good at predicting it. And the same kid in the same house discovers the other door too, that when the room is unbearable, they can leave without moving. They can go somewhere in their head where they are safe, or powerful, or wanted. One skill to see it coming, one skill to survive it once it comes. Both brilliant, both at the time, completely necessary. And here's the thing about a survival skill. Nobody comes and tells you when the danger is over. It doesn't switch off when you move out, or turn 25, or get a life that's actually pretty safe. The simulator keeps running, and now it's running on a world that doesn't need it. So it points itself at your inbox, at a text message someone hasn't replied to, at a look your friend gave you that probably meant nothing. And if you're wondering why you can't just decide to stop, it's because of 3 things happening underneath, and you need to see all 3. The first is that simulation feels like control. When you rehearse the awful conversation 40 times, some part of you genuinely believes you're doing work, that you're paying in advance, that if you can just feel enough of the pain now, it won't be able to ambush you later. This is the deepest lie of the whole pattern, and it's worth saying plainly, it doesn't work. Pre-feeling a catastrophe doesn't reduce the catastrophe. Your body cannot tell the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. So what you're actually doing is running the stress response for an event that hasn't occurred, and in the vast majority of cases, never will. You're paying full price for a thing you'll never receive. The second is resolution, and this is the one that keeps people hooked for years. In your head, you always win. You get the perfect sentence delivered at the perfect moment, and the other person's face does the thing you needed it to do in real life and never did. The imagined version gives you something reality has refused you: closure. So of course you go back. If the only place you've ever received an apology is inside your own skull, your mind will keep manufacturing them. And the third is that the imagined world is risk-free, which makes it an unfair competitor. Real conversations can go badly. Real people can reject you. Real attempts can fail. In the simulation, nothing costs anything, and it's available instantly, for free, in unlimited quantity. That's why Summer's patients described craving. You've got a version of your life sitting right there that is more responsive, more flattering, and less dangerous than the actual one. Every hour spent there is an hour that felt better than the alternative. And that's exactly what makes it so hard to see the price you're paying. Because you are paying one, and it's bigger than lost time. Start with the obvious part. Your emotional budget is finite, and you're spending it on events that haven't happened. You arrive at the actual conversation already exhausted because you've had it 11 times. And then there's the sharper cost, the one that's harder to hear, and it lands on the people around you. Because when you spend hours running scenarios starring someone you don't come out of it neutral. You come out with a verdict. You've watched imaginary them dismiss you, or lie to you, or choose someone else, and your nervous system filed all of it as evidence. So the next time you see the real person, you're not meeting them fresh. You're meeting them carrying a case file of things they never did. And they can feel it. They can feel a coolness they can't account for, a defensiveness in response to nothing, a conversation where you seem to be answering a question they didn't ask. You've been rehearsing with a character who has their face, and then you treat them like the character. That's the quiet damage of a very private habit. You convict people for crimes committed entirely in your imagination. And the escape side has its own cost, which is subtler and sadder. Every hour inside the better world is an hour not spent building this one. The fantasy relationship doesn't require you to be vulnerable to anyone. The imagined success doesn't require you to try and possibly fail. Summer's definition contains the whole tragedy in one phrase: fantasy that replaces human interaction. Not supplements, replaces. So here's the reframe, and it matters that you get this one right, because most people get it backwards. This is not evidence that something's wrong with your brain. It's evidence that your brain is unusually good at something. The capacity to build a world, populate it, and feel it in your body is the same capacity that makes people writers, designers, strategists, and the kind of friend who can actually imagine what someone else is going through. Empathy is simulation. Planning is simulation. You don't have a defect. You have a powerful engine that was installed early, for good reasons, and never got an off switch. Which means the goal is not to stop imagining. Anyone who tells you to just stop overthinking has never tried it. And the research on craving tells you why suppression fails. The goal is to get your hand back on the steering wheel. So here's what actually helps, and it's smaller than you'd expect. First, name which one it is, in the moment. Just ask, am I rehearsing or am I escaping? Am I preparing for a threat or am I leaving the room? You will find that naming it collapses about a third of it on the spot, because a lot of the power of these scenes comes from running unobserved. Second, for the rehearsal, give it a job or send it home. If you're running a scenario about a real conversation, allow yourself one pass, one, and write down the single sentence you actually want to say. Then close it. The simulation was trying to give you something useful. Take the useful thing and dismiss the rest. Loop number 12 contains no new information. It's just your body practicing fear. Third, for the escape, don't ban it, schedule it. Give it 15 minutes somewhere in your day where it's allowed and you're not ashamed of it. Ironically, the fastest way to loosen its grip is to stop treating it as contraband. And then ask the question that actually goes somewhere. What is in that fantasy that isn't in my life? Not the details, the feeling. Is it being admired, being chosen, being unafraid? Because that's not a random daydream, that's a requirements document. Your mind has been telling you what's missing in scene form, possibly for years. And the work isn't to shut it up, it's to finally take delivery of the message. And fourth, the physical one, because you can't argue yourself out of a simulation, but you can outrank it with input. Look at 5 real things. Feel the temperature of the room. Say something out loud. The simulator runs best in silence, in stillness. Sensory reality is the one thing it cannot fully drown out. Because here's where all of this has been going. You have spent years being a person who can generate entire worlds. That's not nothing. That's the rarest thing your mind does. It just got assigned to the wrong department, put on permanent guard duty for a danger that ended a long time ago, or sent out looking for an exit from a life you're allowed to be in now. The kid who built those worlds needed them, and they worked, and they deserve some credit for getting you here. But you're not in that house anymore. The threat you keep rehearsing for probably isn't coming, and the life you keep imagining a better version of is the only one that will ever actually be able to hold you back. So the next time you catch yourself mid-scene, arguing with someone who isn't there, you don't have to be embarrassed. Just notice what your mind was trying to do for you, protect you, or comfort you, and thank it, and then do the one small thing the scene was standing in for. Say the sentence to the real person. Take the small, real risk. Because the most powerful imagination in the world is still only worth what you bring back from it. And you were never meant to live in the rehearsal. You were meant to walk out and have the conversation.